a mod, yeah, 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 yeah. She's a mod, yeah, yeah. She's a mod. She won't take anymore.
Well, patch 9.10 has been out for about a week now, and all the mods that I've wanted have properly updated to some extent, and some of the ones that I was using in my previous 9.10 mod pack I was a little nervous about, so I've decided to put together a proper update for you guys. So I present to you my much more aesthetically pleasing mod picks for 9.10. The foundation of my mod picks is XVM with the following features. Firstly, I've set the tank carousel to 2 lines with a scale of 0.8 so that it fits the options on the selection panel on the left hand side, which allows you to filter your tanks by nation, class, tier level, whether or not you select it as primary, as well as the options of restricting it to non-elite vehicles, premium vehicles, ones that had not yet got their daily doubles, etc. and so forth. If you've had XVM for a while, you know the drill by now. Next up is an in-garage ping reader in the top left corner to let you know how your net's going before you go into battle, which can be important for certain servers. Another extremely useful feature is if you idle your cursor over any of the tank icons in your carousel, you'll be given a lot more in-depth information about the vehicle's characteristics. If you have gone to the XVM website and activated the statistics pack, when you load into the game or when you press tab to bring up the team lists during game, you'll be presented with statistical information about the team members. This will show the number of games each player has played, rounded to the nearest 1,000. It'll show their WN8 rating, which essentially is the amount of damage that they do compared to other people in the same vehicle, and it'll also show the percentage of games that they've won. This will generally tell you which of your teammates are fairly reliable and which of your enemies are a real threat. Most of you will already be familiar with XVM's hit log up in the top left corner that tracks the amount of damage that you do to enemy vehicles over the course of the battle. And when you press Control, it'll bring up a zoomed in minimap into the centre of your screen, which can be very handy for artillery players to focus on particular parts of the map. And when we look at the minimap, that blue circle on it represents your dynamic view range. This is how far your vehicle can spot. It will increase if you have things such as binocular telescopes going off to increase your view range. And obviously, if your commander gets knocked out or your vision device gets damaged, then it's going to shrink. The yellow circle is the maximum spotting distance, which is different from the view range. What this is it's the maximum limit at which the game is going to check to see if you spot an enemy vehicle, regardless of what your actual view range is. So even if you can see 500 meters, it's going to stop at this limit of 425 regardless. The white line is the maximum render distance, a square of 500 meters. Anything within this square that is spotted by you or your team will be drawn in for you, whereas anything that your team spots that falls outside the square will not be shown in-game for you. This means that you can open fire at anyone that's within the render distance, provided that there's no enemies within the spotting range of you, and you'll just be completely undetected. Alright, time for some terminology. The black A shape in the center of the screen is the cursor. This is where your mouse is pointing. The green dotted circle is your client reticle. This is where your game thinks that your turret is pointing. The blue cross is the server reticle. It is where the server that is running this online game thinks that your turret is pointing. Your cursor moves as fast as your mouse sensitivity does. Your client reticle moves as fast as your turret does. And the server reticle moves as fast as your internet. If you're lucky, these all happen fairly close to each other, but not everyone is that lucky. So here's a little visual demonstration of how not everything travels at the same time. Cursor travels faster than the gun travels faster than the server can keep up with, so there's going to be a little bit of lag between where you're pointing and where you're shooting. This is important when you're popping out of cover to take shots because your reticle can get stuck on the terrain. It's probably the most useful mod in this pack. As usual, I've incorporated Kodos's damage panel into my mod pack, as I find it a little nicer looking than the vanilla damage panel, and more importantly, it comes with a repair counter so that I know when I can get my tracks up and running, so I know whether or not to be wasting a repair kit on tracks. Now, Kodos's damage panel normally comes with a damage log functionality, but I've manually disabled that this time around because I'm going to be using Matra's received damage log because of its improved functionality. As noted, I've opted to use Matra's received damage log, which, much like Kodos's damage log, gives you a pop-up for damage that you've blocked or taken, as it happens, just there next to your reticle. And down in the left-hand corner, next to the damage panel, it keeps a running log of the hits that you've taken, whether they've done damage or bounced or what have you, also detailing the type of ammunition used against you. And keep an eye on it if you drive an E100. Just take note of how much heat is fired. And up in the top left-hand corner, just above the player's panel, is a running tally of the amount of damage that you have blocked, as indicated by the shield icon, and the crossed swords, the number next to that, is the amount of damage total that you have inflicted. This is something that Matra has included in his mod because it's extremely handy for keeping track of mission requirements for the personal missions. And when you hold down the Alt key, those values in the top left there change to represent, on the left, the total damage that you have blocked, suffered, and inflicted, and on the right, with the gold crossed swords, is the amount of damage that your platoon mates have inflicted. And I've opted for Matra's mod because it just looks tidier and includes just that little bit more information, and it's easily customizable. Before I get on to discussing Yasin Krassen's session stats, I will quickly point out that I've modified the XVM config to show not only the vehicle experience that you've earned, but also the crew experience, being the value after the diagonal slash. Well, now that Lokistan has retired from mod making, we've all had to switch over to Yasin Krassen's session stats to get our fix. And firstly, this provides a slightly more detailed post-battle summary, the most useful part of which to my mind is the per-game WN8 rating. Then there's the session stats themselves, a detailed list of different metrics and different values, a whole bunch of information gleaned from your playing experience since the last time you refreshed. A handy feature in Yasin Krassen's version of session stats is the ability to switch between a general readout and per-vehicle stats. I have to admit, I prefer the look of Lokistan's session stats, and his efforts will certainly be missed by the community, especially as Yasin Krassen's session stats are unfortunately bundled in with his coloured messages. But Yasin Krassen's session stats are a solid mod, and it's good to have this at the very least. The final mod that I'm using is the Battle Assistant Artillery View site, which, when you are in Artillery View, you just hit G and get a third-person perspective, basically trajectory sight, which can be helpful and is at least a lot more aesthetically pleasing for artillery players. And that's pretty much it.